So we're here to talk about silica dust, and I'll tell you what, folks, I'm not fearful of many things, but this silica dust, this one scares me based on what I learned several weeks ago when I went out to be trained on this. And tell you what, we've all worked in and around silica dust, but after today, I want you to be thinking about it differently than you have been. Because it's not just dust. This dust will kill you. This is deadly dust. And it affects nearly 1 million construction workers. Frightening amount of workers that have exposed over the PEL. The PEL stands for the permissible exposure level. So what that means is you can have that amount 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 30 years and not have an illness or an injury because of it. If you work with any of the materials that are listed here, these are the materials that are common in construction that have silica. So when you look at this great big list, what it basically tells me is, hell, there ain't anything that doesn't have it but water, maybe. Okay? And water is a key element as a protection mechanism for you. I'm going to run this little video clip.
When I was just 13 years old, my father died of silicosis. The disease took about 5 years to kill him. Not only was it incredibly difficult, slow, and painful for him, but we had to watch it.
When I get exposed to dust now, and not just silica dust, any dust, it feels like I have a plastic bag around my head and someone's trying to pull it shut on me.
The doctor there told me that,
Oops, what happened there? That was me. My apologies.
When I was just 13 years old, my father died of silicosis. The disease took about 5 years to kill him. Not only was it incredibly difficult, slow, and painful for him, but we had to watch it.
When I get exposed to dust now, and not just silica dust, any dust, it feels like I have a plastic bag around my head and someone's trying to pull it shut on me.
the doctor there told me that I should probably seriously consider changing my careers and seeing some specialists. That wasn't good news for me, because this is my job, it's what I want to do, and it's all that I know.
Obviously, I spent a lot of time on oxygen all night long, and most times during the day.
If I'd known it was hurting me, you know, or killing me, shoot, I'd have done things a lot different. I had no idea.
The history of lung disease among workers caused by exposure to silica is long and storied. About 2 million construction workers in the U.S. have had occupational exposure to crystalline silica dust. 59,000 of them will develop silicosis and other lung diseases during their lifetime. We've known for decades about how to prevent silica-related diseases. It's not until now that the solutions are mandated by law. Silica is one of the most common minerals on the planet. It's in the sand on our beaches and the quartz of our mountains and land masses. Silica is not dangerous to humans in and of itself. The problems start when we work to manipulate it for our own ends. And that's exactly what happens in construction. When materials that contain silica are disturbed, they generate small particles that can get into your lungs. And once they go in, they don't come out. On a construction site, we find silica in many materials. Here are some of the tasks that disturb silica and make it dangerous for workers. Bricklayers, cement masons, and roofers routinely work with silica materials. Operating engineers and laborers may work with silica materials when moving earth or doing demolition. If you do occasional cutting or drilling as an electrician, sheet metal worker, plumber, or pipe fitter, you may be impacted. And if your work puts you in a dusty area, you need to be aware of your surroundings. Silica is not a recently created hazard. It was first discovered by Hippocrates in about 400 BC. 4 centuries later, Pliny the Elder described miners who used forms of respiratory protection. In 1700, Dr. Bernardino Ramazzini identified evidence of silicosis in stone cutters. And in 1860, two English physicians, Peacock and Greenhow, conducted an autopsy of a mason and found a hard, gritty material in his lungs, which they called sand. In the U.S., in 1917, Dr. Alice Hamilton made the connection between the dust that Vermont granite cutters were inhaling and the resulting fatal illnesses. By the 1930s, those workers had successfully bargained for the installation of ventilation equipment in their worksheds. In 1931, the nation's worst industrial disaster took place during the building of a hydroelectric project in West Virginia. 1,500 mostly African-American workers who came north to find work ended up dying in the Hawk's Nest tunnel disaster.
They were ordered to drill through that mountain, and that mountain was made entirely of silica. And they had no meaningful protection at all. It turned out, by the way, that the employer knew how dangerous it was, because when the engineers and the company representatives went there, they wore masks. So they knew it, but they didn't care about their workers.
476 workers died almost immediately. Many were buried in trenches in a nearby field with just corn stalks for markers. Another 1,500 contracted the disease within 2 years.
I lost 3 sons from working in the town of Silicosis. One is 18, 123, and 121. I have silicosis myself, and it's impossible for me to get a job anywhere.
My husband, Cecil Jones, died working in the Hawk's Nest tunnel, tracking silicosis.
And each and every day that I worked in that tunnel, I had to carry out 10 to 14 men who was overcome by the dust.
The Hawk's Nest tragedy directly connected exposure to silica with silicosis and spurred public outcry for worker protection and workers' compensation. In 1938, then Secretary of Labor Francis Perkins commissioned a study on how to work more safely with silica.
After a year of work, the National Silicosis Conference Committee has just made its report of findings and recommendations. This report shows how silicosis occurs, where it occurs, and what the disease is, and it makes recommendations for its practical control. Above all, the report emphasizes that these control measures, if conscientiously adopted and applied, that silicosis can be prevented.
The 1938 recommendations were to work wet and use vacuums to minimize the dust. Unfortunately, these were merely suggestions and didn't have the teeth of enforcement. Many employers did follow the recommendations until technology advanced, making it possible to work dry. The new methods saved time and money, but caused a renewed increase in silicosis and other lung diseases.
In the early days of my career, I never saw a masonry saw that was not water covered. We couldn't, the blades would fall apart if they weren't wet. Since the wet-dry blade came into effect, hey, water stops going, we keep right on cutting.
The Occupational Safety and Health Administration wasn't established until 1971. That year, OSHA mandated a limit for the amount of silica a worker could be exposed to, but it didn't go far enough.
We already knew that the standard that went in place back in the early 70s was out of date the day it went into place.
Fast forward to 2016. After decades of trying, OSHA finally released a federal standard lowering the exposure limit by more than half and creating a series of recommendations for how to work safely with silica.
The Labor Department is announcing a final silica rule that updates the standards, saving more than 600 lives per year and protecting the health of thousands of others.
The recommendations are essentially the same ones they made in 1938. Work wet and use vacuums to eliminate or reduce dust at its source. It took nearly 80 years to get federal protection from silica, but now that it's in place, we need to use it. Workers need to learn more about the hazard and use the recommended controls. Always be aware of your surroundings and the work being done by other crafts, and take care not to bring the dust home on your clothes or person. Contractors must designate a competent person to control and monitor for silica on the job. Make sure your workers are using vacuums, water substitutes, ventilation, or different work practices, and provide respiratory protection when needed. Too many workers have died from silica for too many years. We can work safely with silica. Let's do it.
So the health effects have been known for 300 years. Because guys were dying within a couple of years of starting to work. You start that year. To me, the piece that scares me the most is that it's like, okay, well, why now? Well, here's the why now. Unions were trying to figure out why their employees were dying in their 40s and 50s. They were dying of some pretty common diseases like those listed here. Perhaps you know people in your workforce or your family members that have had these diseases. They also found that there's a number of people that when they started their retirement program, they were on oxygen. They were having some very, very difficult times surviving because of their long-term low-dose exposure to silica. And how they found out? They were doing autopsies on people that do the work that y'all do. And they found out, oh my goodness, a low-level exposure over a long period of time can really be a problem. These diseases right here, when people would go to their doctor and say, oh, well, you've got COPD or you've got emphysema, you know, and if a fellow also happened to smoke, they'd say, oh, that was probably died smoking. Okay? A lot of these diseases people were having, they didn't smoke. The cause, the source of this disease is respiratory silica, and it's permanent. It's irreversible. What you have in you stays in you. There is no known cure, and it continues to get worse even after the exposure has gone away. So the key then is to prevent this. Now, were you in this class Tuesday? You were. You want to teach this one? Yes. All right. Okay. So here are the basically three classifications. Acute. Think about it sudden. Those are the folks that were dying within the first few years. Accelerated and chronic. And that blue star, that's where many of us in building construction trades reside. Here are some of the symptoms. Well, you look at these symptoms and you say, man, I could already have some of these. Or perhaps and you may be tracing it to a cause that you thought was from some other source. We talked about it. There's a federal standard that went in place last year, June 23rd. There's been federal law since June 23rd. The reason we started having these classes on May 23rd is because that's 1 month before it becomes law in California. So, you know, today's the 25th, but we started the classes on the 23rd to make sure people were aware of it. The data's been out there for a year, other than California. As a matter of fact, I believe this video clip is from Canada.
Silica. It's one of the most common substances on Earth. It can be found in materials like sand and rock, and building products like concrete and brick. When a worker cuts, grinds, or drills materials that contain silica, dangerous crystalline silica dust is released into the air. As the worker breathes, silica crystals flow into his mouth and nose and down the air passages deep into the lungs. The tiny crystals enter the small, fragile air sacs, where oxygen is absorbed into the blood. Immune system cells, called macrophages, engulf and try to dissolve the crystals, but they are unable to. Over time, more and more crystals build up inside the macrophage cells. The macrophages carry the silica into the walls of the lung, where they die. Scar tissue forms around the dead cells and spreads as more cells die. This damage can continue even after the exposure to silica stops. Eventually, so much scar tissue forms that the lungs can no longer function. For information on how to protect yourself from silica exposure, visit WorksafeBC.com.
So it's not just a California thing, not just a federal thing, it's an international thing. This doesn't really matter where you're from, it doesn't have any preference. But the disease, your potential for exposure is measured by these things. Route of exposure, that's the same with any hazardous chemical. So the route of exposure for silica, respiratory system. You can eat it, not going to be a problem. You can put it on your skin, not going to be a problem. That would be different with sulfuric acid, right? You put it on your skin, you get burned, you eat it. This is purely if you breathe it. The relative toxicity, this is the part that scares me. It's huge, and I'll show that. I'll reference some other known, very dangerous materials. The dose, so how much and how long, the interaction, and some individual characteristics. You probably know those guys that live to be 105 and they drank bourbon every day and they smoked a pack of cigarettes every day. Okay? My guess is there weren't a whole lot of them. But there are guys that the individual characteristics could be there. For me, the scary part is as your lungs start to be affected, it's the lower part of your lungs first. And as it slowly affects the lungs, you will then, it's like filling up a wine bottle that maybe has been painted black. And you're pouring, a cup of water at a time into this. You don't really know. You may pour 4 cups in there, it'd be fine, and you get 5 dribbles from the next cup. The neck of the wine bottle is so narrow that it'll overflow. Right? That's the same kind of thing with the exposure in our lungs. The average male with a moderate activity level, which is how they rate construction workers, 17,000 liters of air in an 8-hour period. That's a shift. So think about a liter of water, a liter of soda, 17,000 of those a day while you're at work. And it's enough to fill floor to ceiling that truck. That's your lung exposure rate every shift. The particulate we're talking about, to make it respirable. Beach sand, relatively small, is heavy. Those particles would fall to the ground. Okay. These respirable products, gravitational forces don't really affect them. Wind current will. Static electricity will. So they're not going to fall out. To give you an idea of the size, a hair is 50 microns. You can see a hair. This particulate we're talking about is anything less than 10 microns. And generally speaking, for the respirable dust, it's so it's that dot on a hair. This is tiny, tiny, tiny stuff. You are not going to be able to see it. So here's what the human eye can see. Right about 40 microns or above, you can see it. Below 40 microns, you can't see it. However, persons out there operating a jackhammer, that dust cloud that you are able to see, the visible particulate, there's the invisible part that can get up into the breathing zone. So if you can see silica, there's definitely going to be small enough particles that you can breathe in. again, dose and duration, any chemical, amount of time, and we're talking about tiny levels, folks. Tiny, tiny levels. So when we talk about micrograms, that is a millionth of a gram. Jason, Matt, Josh, grab your partner, come on up here.
Come on, guys.
But under construction, we realize that if you are an employee and you said, yes, sir, okay, I realize you live on Mahogany Road, but you sat in the back row, okay? All right, here's what Gus, could you stand here? Face Josh. Matt, could you stand here? Face Jason. You boys come in closer now, come on in to where you can reach and hold hands. You hold hands here. You hold hands there, you hold hands here. All right? So what we're going to talk about is, what is a cubic meter? Waist high inside that area, that's a cubic meter. How long do you think I can have them hold their hands before they realize I'm just giving a crowd? All right, y'all can let go now. Okay? Okay? Honest, you can go back to your chair. Yes, we got other family here, so we're not going to embarrass you as much as we normally might for sitting in the back. So when we're talking about 25 micrograms in a cubic meter, you just saw what a cubic meter is. And I've been telling you, this is a tiny, tiny, small amount. But Brendan, where's your mother from? Any other Unger employee help him with where his mother's from?
Right, yeah, I know.
Say it again. Missouri.
Missouri.
That's because my mom is from Missouri. Missouri's the show me state. Don't care what you say, show me. Right? So as far as I'm concerned, everybody's mother's from Missouri. You go home and tell your mother that. A microgram, tiny, tiny, little amounts. How about I took a baby aspirin and I cut it into 1,600 equal pieces. And then I took one of those pieces and I crushed it and I sprinkled it into that cubic meter that those guys just demonstrated. That's enough to be a problem. That's enough with long-term exposure. It will kill you. Tiny, tiny levels. I hope we got that point across. In the standard, there are some, now, this presentation will be available to anybody that wants it. The presentation you're going through today is what Unger Construction is using for the regulatory requirement for Silica Dust HAZCOM. Law says you have to have that training. We'll give it to you. The gal that sent the message to your office to say, come here please, send a note to her. Her name is Deanna McCormick. She's not here today. And she won't be here tomorrow, but send her a note. Love a copy of that. Boom. She'll give it to you. Or, since Deanna's not here today, if you just write your name on the back of a $20 bill and pass it to the front of the class, I might be able to find a way to get you that presentation. But the law says you have to prove you're below an action level. So when you think about action levels, you go like, oh man, this is going to take me back to what the standard is for lead and what the standard is for asbestos. Yep. Two already known construction hazardous materials, right? And what the law says is, you know where your mother's from. I know you don't work for us, but Matt, where's your mother from?
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay, so you're going to have to show somebody. They're going to say, where's your data? You need to make a data-based decision. If you are below 25 micrograms, you don't have to do anything. If you're at 25 to 50, that puts you at the action level. Now you need to do something, even though you're not above the PEL. And if you're above the PEL, you need to do something to protect your workers. So we got the below 25, no problem. At 25, there's steps. And over 50, the world changes. So I told you that I was going to show you some other, who knows what phosgene was used for in like the 40s and late late 20s through the 40s. Anybody know? Anybody a world history buff? Anybody know anything about World War I and chemical warfare? Phosgene, look at how about that you can be exposed to it. 400 micrograms. Silica, 50. How about if I were to tell you, Anthony, is cyanide a good thing or a bad thing? Bad. All by himself he got that right. And that's my boy, Anthony. Here's cyanide. 5,000 micrograms of cyanide is safer than silica dust. This is what scares me. Is I've been around the silica dust and thought, well, I said, I know I'm not doing these things. This is some scary stuff. So there are some hierarchies of control. Any safety professional should be able to tell you what these things are. The first one, when you're dealing with a hazardous material, can you substitute it for something else? And no, not with silica. Hell, it's everywhere. It's in everything. So you can't, the very first option of substitution goes away. The next option is an engineering control. Give me a piece of equipment, a machine, something that will help separate the worker from the hazard. That's an engineering control. An administrative control will be, Scott, you can work on it for the first 4 hours. When we get to lunch, because remember we're trying to change the dose and the duration. He can work on it until lunch, and then after lunch, Gus will work on it. That would be an administrative control to reduce the hazard. And the last type of control, the one you don't really want to use because you are this close to the hazard, is PPE. Do I have any electricians in the room? How thick are your little rubber gloves? Are they not that thick?
I don't wear them.
Aha. For the guys that might,
Yeah.
okay, it's
Very
a,
thin, yes.
so what that means is your life is being protected by something, and we say it's okay, put that glove on, go. Go, bad boy. And we're going to put you that close to the hazard. So I want you to think of these hierarchy of controls a little differently. They've always, you know, this pyramid has been in here since the 40s. I want you to think of it as an inverted pyramid. This is your distance from the hazard. PPE, thickness of a glove. Administrative work controls, something much better. Engineering controls, much better than that yet. And then the elimination is much better. So PPE isn't our first choice. Last choice. It's when these other things don't work well enough in combination, put them in that. So what were the controls? This wet methods. Silica dust is a water-soluble poison. Pour water on it, goes away. I like that. Okay? So do it wet. If you can't do it wet, then do it under a local exhaust ventilation. Who haven't I picked on? That's one of mine. Luciano. Local exhaust ventilation, vacuum. Put it under vacuum or isolation. Put up barriers, walls, some means to protect folks. I want to go back to the, Matt's working on a jackhammer. Got this cloud of stuff all around him, right? These two guys safe? He's wearing a respirator. So we're going to need some level of isolation. One of those levels of isolation is he's going to do it in the morning and you can do it at night. Okay? Or he'll do it on Monday. We're going to keep everybody out there until Tuesday, and then y'all get in there Tuesday. But if you can't do that, let's put up a curtain, put up some plastic, put up a barrier, separate him from you so that y'all are safe. And I tell you, the plastic that works the best for this is the cheapest possible plastic like you can get from Home Depot. Like if you were going to be painting in your house and you didn't want your carpets to get on it. The cheap thin, it does have to be fire rated. No. You want the cheap stuff because it will affect the static charge of the particles. And the particles that are in the air are going to go flying around with air current, motion current, static electricity, and it's going to hit that sheet and stick. And it'll be filtered out of the airstream, protecting the guys on the other side. Okay, so that painter's plastic is a really good way to do this. Whoops. So we said that this standard's been in place for quite some time. And here's a video from McCarthy Builders.
In the 40s, it was built for the military, and they were building different military equipment. I don't know exactly, but the building was put together very stout because of that. And we are doing a seismic upgrade on the building, and then we're going to turn it into offices and shops and restaurants and so on. In our count, it came out that we were around 50,000 dowels, where we had 50,000 holes to drill in the existing building to accept the reinforcing we were putting. The immediate concern was the exposure of silica dust to the men and the ergonomics of drilling, how you drill, your position when you're drilling, and worried about strains, muscle damage, so. Okay, this system starts off with 2 TE50 Hilti drills. They have a vacuum, a Hilti vacuum with a hose with an apparatus right here that actually surrounds the bit. And this bit is hollow. And if you looked at the end of the bit, you would see holes where, when it's crushing the concrete, it's sucking it down the bit, in through the hose to the vacuum, so that there's no silica dust at all exposed. Anytime you're working around existing concrete, you have to worry about silica dust. There's many ways to take care of it. There's respirators, there's dust masks, and so on, but that's a human factor where the men have to learn how to use them, and they have to use them all the time. And we wanted to take that equation out of there and try to approach it to where we didn't have any of the dust available for the men to. My safety director came to me and said, hey, we've got this guy's he's working on these drilling rigs that started out for ergonomics that looked like they might work for our project. So we went down and this was probably a year and a half ago, we went down and we looked at the rigs, we used them, and found out that it was a rig that would definitely help us with making sure that, number one, we avoided strains and sprains and so on, but also that the possibility of the silica dust being contained in the vacuum system of it. And when we started talking to Hilti, we realized that Hilti had a system where they could contain it and we wouldn't be exposed to the silica dust at all. And that was through the vacuum through the bit. The concrete bit that was doing the drilling actually sucked the dust through the bit into the vacuum cleaner bag. We did some testing. We had hygienists come out and put some pumps on the guys who were using the rigs, and everything was below any standard that we needed to work.
All of the monitoring results came in lower than required for any respirators. But on McCarthy's benefit, our behalf, we had all our guys fit tested, trained for the use of respirators, and made all respirators available. And just for precaution, it was, if you're going to be in there grading or working with there's dust, wear a particle mask, just to eliminate any chance of it.
You have to hand a man a drill, and another man a vacuum cleaner, and one guy holds the vacuum cleaner against the hole while the other man's drilling. Not that silica dust is not completely contained. It's going to get away because it's a human error. You're holding it here, holding it there. You're not going to collect it all.
And I've actually witnessed saw cutting being done where you couldn't even see the man operating the saw with that much silica dust in the air. You don't see that anymore. They've gone from standing there with hoses to wet it down as they cut, to using wet cut saws to everything being to the systems they are now, it would just eliminate it all.
With the equipment and the planning and everything we did for this equipment, I think in the long run, our cost benefit was the fact we didn't have injuries. We didn't have to worry about strains or anybody going to the hospital or a lost time accident or anything like that. And to me, that's the benefit we had financially, was the fact that we were able to keep everything safe. The men named their own machines. This is Gertrude, and this is Bill, and this is Mary, and whatever. And they had these machines, and they protected their machines. They took care of the machines, and they really appreciated the fact that we were using these and the reason.
Well, you know, silica is harmful and it can kill you. And I think with this system, between the drill bits, the vacuums, and the drills, that system together, it allows you as a worker not to be exposed to it at all.
I mean, as construction workers, you're exposed to so many different hazards, you know, and trying to eliminate one of the bigger ones on a project like this was big for a lot of us to be able to eliminate that hazard and allow us to not have to worry about a long-term effect of silica. This is changed right here, and we're right in the middle of it. So McCarthy Building Companies has given me that opportunity, and I'm grateful for that.
One of the best things about this rig is that right there. That's the dude. That's our company.
I mean, this is where the industry is going as far as for drilling.
His culture on safety, to me, is one of the best, and we don't take chances. We make sure that everything is set for safety before we start. Zero accidents, zero danger to the men for any silica dust fumes. That's one thing that we don't want them to get near, ingest anything. Want to make sure that the men have the safest workplace that we can prepare for.
Is the sign-in sheet still working its way around? Has everyone had a chance to sign it? I know we had one person come in. Everybody signed it? Now hold it. William, I handed you my favorite ink pen.
It went that away, so
That-
that's Dave's pen.
That too?
I handed it off.
This one?
That one.
There you go.
That's my favorite pen today. All right, so here we're going to try to demonstrate to you the differences in the techniques. Same tool, same slab of concrete. Grinding with a vacuum system. However, if I held my hand over that vacuum hose, would I have effective flow? You'd hear the motor running, sounded like it was flowing, but it won't flow. The silica dust is so small, it'll plug and clump the filters. That vacuum is running, but it's not sucking away the effluent, which is why the industry now offers a dual filter vacuum system. One of the filters will be shaken 3 times a minute. You'll hear them thump. Bam, 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 as it's shaking that dust off while the other filters run. And they'll toggle back and forth. So simply having a HEPA vacuum, probably not going to cut it. You're going to need a self-cleaning vacuum. They're relatively expensive. They're going to be $750, somewhere in that range. And tell you what, you can spend a lot more money on them if you want. And they've got great big ones. Okay, there's all kinds of technology behind that. I'm not trying to represent any manufacturer. I think all of them that are dual filter, that self-clean, that's the one I get. This guy's doing the same job without the shroud, so he's not vacuum anymore. Wet. No dust. So these regulation standards, though, have a housekeeping element. When he's done, there's dust everywhere. When he's done, there's a slurry. And then it dries, and it's full of silica dust. and you can no longer dry sweep the silica dust. The regulations prohibit that. So vacuum that dude up when it's wet. Or vacuum it, and the guy have a respirator on when he's vacuuming that dust. This next slide. Lyle, this looks like a block down to me. I don't know if it's one of your guys. Okay, I don't think it is, because that's a $1,000 respirator. Okay, yeah, and you know, I like Lyle a lot, but I've also known him long enough that he didn't buy 50 of those. Okay, all right, so here's a guy in this cloud doing all this dust. He is obviously protected. How about the folks working on the scaffold above him? How about the folks working left or right of this photograph? So the regulations tell you now you can't do that. You have to protect nearby workers. I like it. Here's that same operation with an integral water supply system. Water's built into the blade. I mean, built into the tool. Cut the same block on the same job with that tool. And he's running it right there. Huge difference with water. In fact, okay, here, dry saw. Wet saw. Jackhammering. Jackhammering with water. Huge differences. There's other complicating factors, because now you have to clean the water, and now there's slurry, and there's I tell you what, that's a big difference to something that can kill you in 30 years. I'd go that way, which is the way the long way. How about these drills? Same outfit. Drilling holes, trying to demonstrate. This is a system that has water capability and the water's not on. This is a system that doesn't have water and just uses one of those industrial-sized big mama vacuum cleaners. That is self-cleaning. Huge difference. All right. Mamas are from Missouri. So the law says that you need objective data. As an employer, you have to have the data for your people per this regulation. I'll tell you what, we can share that regulation, we can share that data, we can share those costs. But the air monitoring, it's highly probable that your insurance company has an industrial hygienist on retainer, and they'll do that for you for free. You just have to ask for it. Now the other thing is, how many of us drill holes in concrete for mounting brackets or for any other thing? Show of hands. Do we all have to do our own data? So, okay, how about what we do is we go out and we decide somebody's got a job that's got a bunch of holes to be drilled. To collect the data, and for the data to be valid, you need 4 hours of sampling. That doesn't mean you drill one hole and 4 hours later you stop the clock. It means 4 hours of data. Hey, if somebody's got a chance to get that data, let's share it. Okay, we'll split it 50 ways. You know, it's not that expensive to get the data. Concrete in this building, concrete in that building, same stuff. That was born in the, you know, the 40s. This is done in the 80s. Same stuff with respect to the content of silica. So we can share that data. If your equipment manufacturers have data that, and many of them are doing it because you can sell more tools that way, and they've got data that says if you use my tool with the McGillicuddy 37, if you do it, here's the data that says that won't kill you. You can use that data. But it's got to be in your plan. You have to have it documented that you're using that data. So industrial hygienists will come out with a pump setup that looks a lot like this, and a little battery pack fits on your hip. Okay, drop it into the breathing zone. It's going to represent this little pump here. We'll have this is a known flow rate. There's a flow tube in there. So that is simulating your respirations. 17,000 liters of air are going to flow through that in an 8-hour period. And then it's going to go on a filter, and that filter is going to go out and get weighed, analyzed with a scanning electron microscope to find out, okay, you got stuff in it, what is it? You know, because there may be other sources of dust that are not silica, and they're only looking for the silica part, and that's how it's done. The process to sample this, 4 hours. To get the data, probably 2 or 3 days. How long can you use the data? Forever. Okay? It's key to get the data. The guy in the field's going to wear a pump, look like this, and go to work. Now, if I was getting ready to set one up, because I'm a general contractor, right? So y'all are, if you're a subcontractor to us, you would be the creating the hazard contractor, or generating the hazard. And the employees are your employees. Per the law, you have to have those records for them. As a general contractor, I'm called a controlling contractor. So on the multi-employer site, if Matt's guys are not following the rules because he's not making them and he's under contract to me, we both go to jail. Okay? So we're going to want to see that data. Show me, my mama's from Missouri, show me your data. Show me your plan. Show me that you are in compliance with the regulations. And if I was going to go to the trouble to set up sampling for the work that the fellows over here were going to do, I'd put a tripod over here or hang one from the T-bar and say, this is 17 feet from there. This represents a nearby dude. Okay? And let them run at the same time. So that you've got data based on whatever task you're doing that says, according to my data, nearby dude doesn't have anything to worry about. The person that has something to worry about is the guy standing right under the hole that's drilling it. The guy that's, whatever the distance you choose is. If the data says it's safe, he's safe. All right, for any of you that are taking notes, this might be a good slide to take a note on. Law says you have to have a written plan. You have to have a written plan that is site specific. I'm working here and I'm working across the street. 2 different sites. 2 different plans. But basically the data in the plan can be the changes to address and the changes the name of the competent person. To develop one plan, have those fields swapped out, boom, you can be in compliance. But you're going to have a plan, and I'm going to want to see it. My foreman, my superintendent's going to want to see it. If you can't produce it, I can't let you work after June 23rd. Okay. Safe work plan, pre-test planning. You're going to have to tell me how you're doing your silica stuff. You've got to have a separate setup for that. Okay. Or if you say, well, I'm drilling holes for you, Dave, just like I did last week. Okay, but this is after June 23rd, then that JHA, you just add items that are for the silica specific items and you're good to go. You're going to need your air monitoring data. Like, David, I only got 4 weeks. How am I going to get that data? Everybody in California is known for a year that you needed the data. The federal system went in a year ago, but many firms weren't right on top of it, didn't exactly know. And there's a chance that some of the sampling data, it could financially hurt you. If I have to sample 37,000 things, and it costs $2,000 a pop, I got issues. So OSHA developed a table with data for you. You follow that table, that's your data. If the task that you're doing is not covered in that table, then you need to come up with another way to do it. Training, you're going to need to demonstrate to me, this is not a big deal, I'm just a little fat guy. Okay, you're going to have to demonstrate to the superintendent and the foreman, can you pass those back? You're going to have to demonstrate to the superintendent and the foreman for Unger Construction that you've got the training. Can you take a copy and pass those back? All right, so the training, you're going through HAZCOM. You'll have it. If you would like this for your employees, grab it. If you've already got one, fine. But I don't want to see your records that says Joe Schmuckatelli got trained and Manny Mo and Jack haven't yet got trained. Okay, and so Manny Mo and Jack can't do silica dust creating activities until they get the HAZCOM training, and then they need to be trained on whatever your best work practices are as defined in that book or your company policy. We're going to talk about engineering controls again, but here's the key. Look, it's engineering, PPE, but it's only if the administrative controls and the engineering controls aren't that good. So I'll tell you, what I just handed out, that's the regulation. You'll notice at the top it's a 1926 number. 1926 tells you that it's a federal number. If it said Title 8, that would be California number. That's the regulation. That's what you need to comply with. So I know that all of you now, your mothers have been converted. They are from Missouri, and you're going to tell me, David, where does it say? Right there. Those are your copies. You can have them. There is something at the bottom of this, though, that you may already have employees that wear a respirator. There's a couple of differences with the Silica program. One of them is called a unique medical evaluation. So in this medical evaluation, an employee that is going to wear a respirator more than 30 times a year needs a specific medical evaluation for silica exposure. X-rays. Certain kind of X-rays. There's requirements for it. Full pulmonary evaluation. Not a bad thing anyway. I'll get right there, guys. Full pulmonary evaluation. And the X-ray has to be read by a certified NIOSH B reader. Yeah, holy shit. You know what? There's 14 of them in the world. Okay? Yeah. These guys, and the average age is 73 years old. These guys that got that NIOSH B reader certification were back in the coal miner days when black lung was the thing. Okay? They've got that under control, so it's tough. In the state of California, there's a guy, and he happens to work at UC Davis at the Med Center. So the problem's going to be, as I see it, is when you go out and do your medical evaluations, you go out and get this all done, there's only a dude that can read it. I don't know how long it takes him to read it. It's not like he's reading a book, but I'll bet it's more than 20 minutes. And he's got to log his report and the finding. So if we all send him in, we may not have the data back for months. Okay? So that could be, I think that there's enough clever young doctors in the world to figure out that you can get paid as a NIOSH B reader. And that there's a lot of those guys that are not going to be around anymore, and there probably will be more guys. But you only need to do that if a guy wears a respirator 30 or more times in a calendar year. Gus, your question.
30 shifts, 30 days, or
you know,
before lunch I put her on after lunch, then that's twice.
Thank you. There's always one guy in class that helps, and then there's a guy that tries to deter from the instructor. Here's the deal. If you wear it one time for 5 minutes and don't wear it again all day, that's a day. I wear it for 8 hours. It's a day. So here's what Unger Construction is trying to do for those of us that work for Unger Construction. Jason and Anna have set up a $0 cost code on the time card so that every individual worker that is submitting time card, you're going to be checking that field for that person. Did you wear a respirator for silica today or not? We'll be able to track it. My desire is to try to prevent guys from having to go through the medical exposure. So we're going to do an administrative control. We're going to get to, I'll pick a number. When the guy gets to 25, we're going to go, okay, y'all can't do that anymore. So we're going to be cross-training guys so we can do the same thing of dose and duration that we did with Scott and you. You do it until lunch, you do it after lunch, you know, we'll do that same type of thing. But that's not going to work for Anthony's crew. Anthony's guys are probably going to be over 30, certainly. Okay? And it's like, okay, we're in. Okay? We want to get Anthony's crew the best care that we can get them, and he'll be in the system. Any other comments or questions about the medical evals? So in a couple of weeks, as the rest of the Unger employees go through this program, when Anna and Jason get that training database up and running, I'll be giving this very same class in the field to everybody that works in the field, and we're going to test the time cards with the foremen and superintendents and PEs and PMs at that time to make sure the system works. Any other comments or questions? All right, so here, if any of you have used a respirator, you have a respirator program, Silica Dust, can't use the two-strap anymore. Okay, so the two-strap respirator, no bueno. Okay, so the deal with the respirators are, you have to have a fit test annually, right? See, these recent college graduates, you just point at them and say, right, okay, watch this, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so the annual fit test is not a fitness test. It is a skeletal test. I get a motorcycle rack and my skeletal alignment is different. I wear dentures. I've gained weight or lost weight. You have to have a fit test based on the style, model of the respirator. Does it seal or not? It's a life protection piece. Fit test. So how they do that is they put the respirator on. Then they put a bag over your head. And they spritz inside the bag. Hexamethyl dye stinks real bad. And then they ask you to repeat the alphabet and sing happy birthday and, you know, move in your mouth and move in your jaw, do some jumping. And there's no doubt if you have a poor fit, because you will be on your hands and knees dry heaving. Okay? And that's how they test the fit of the respirator. You can't do that on a two-strap. When you're wearing a respirator, you still need a medical evaluation. The medical evaluation is there's a questionnaire, and basically they're looking at cardiopulmonary function, blood pressure, that type of thing. Okay? And so you'll get a medical evaluation, and I think it's a good thing. Because if I were to put a respirator on him in August, I'll bet his heart rate goes, because that respirator, it's hard to breathe through those little filters on that thing. So his exertion is going to be way up there. So there may be a restriction that says, oh, based on his medical eval, he can only wear one for 4 hours. Where someone else might be able to wear one for all 8. Any comments or questions about the respirators? Was that a question? All right, so here's what, you know, this respirator right here, about 75 bucks. These about $15. These are about 50. The respirators that Unger Construction is going after is a loose-fitting PAPR. PAPR stands for Powered Air Purifying Respirator. Now, class participation part. It's August. You put that Ruskell on your face. You start work. What's the first thing you're going to notice? Fog and sweat on the inside of that, and you're not going to be able to do it. These powered air purifying respirators blow air through your face. Keep you cool. That mask will not fog. And it's loose fit, so you don't have to shave. It's loose fit. We see you wouldn't have to shave. Who's got more of a beard than him? All right? He can still wear it. But my name's Dave.
Mike.
Hi, Mike. Okay? If he were trying to grow one like ZZ Top, you're going to have to clip it or put it in a beard bun or whatever you would call it to get it out of the way. But you don't have to shave. Big benefit. These loose-fitting PAPRs, that's where we're going. They're really, really pricey. Really, really pricey. So if I'm issuing a respirator to a guy that wears, you know, it costs $75, it's his. He can name it. I'm buying one that's $1,500. We're sharing. Okay? So there are liners that pop out. There are disinfectants that are being used. But it's a pretty cool deal. Anthony, you wore one the other day. What you think about it?
Oh, I thought it was great. Got air blowing through your face the whole time, keeping you cool. I mean, I've done concrete for 20 years, and that was my first thing. Was dust and sweat and dirt can clog it up, but I don't think that it will.
It's a pretty cool setup. Now, when I worked for Intel for 31 years, I wore that respirator for 18 of those years, all day, 12-hour shifts, okay, for 18 years. They're a pretty cool respirator. All right, isolation versus separation. These are the things you're going to need to figure out. I've got this data that says, here's my guys. And I'm going to say, well, what about the guys working near you, next to you? How are we going to isolate them, schedule them? We're going to have to plan for that. June 23rd, boom, of this year, it's effective. So, tell you what, here's the things that are in essence different. So to try to help everybody, we did Dave's big stuff. Here's the big stuff. I don't know how many of you have already read this regulation or are on top of it, but here's the things that Dave thought. Database decision or table 1. I'd like you to look at table 1. please open your packet. Find table 1. Look at the tasks that they're doing in table 1 and see, are those, you keep reading down the left column until you find a task that you or your colleagues do. There's several pages of it. Find a task that you do and then look to the right of that and it'll tell you what the controls are. So if you're finding things that you do on this list, you don't need data. There's your data. Your data and your safe work plan. If there are things that are on this list, that are not on this list that y'all do, you're gonna go have to get some data. And the key is this second bullet down here. Can you prove that you are below 25 micrograms? So you're going to get that data to prove it. And here's the way they say proof. And I know nobody believes what I say, but it's in the regulation. To confirm that you have below 25, you need at least 2 samples that have to be more than 7 days apart. So you can't drill a sample and go, boy, I really like the way that one turned out. And then move over 6 inches and, yep, I like that one too. They have to be at least 7 days apart, and that test has to be conducted within 6 months of the first test. You get 2 tests under that criteria that say whatever you're doing is below, you're below. You never have to test again. The problem is if you're above 25, but less than 50, you basically got to keep testing. Just keep testing and testing to confirm. So it's in every 6 months. It's a biannual. Test it again. Confirm that you're below 50. And then if you're above 50, you got to repeat that monitoring every 3 months until you get consecutive data that says you're above it, and then you're done. You've got your data. So as you can see, the sampling could potentially be huge. Your insurance company should be able to do it for free. If for whatever reason they're not able to do it for free, anybody that you would use to test for lead or asbestos on the project, they've got an industrial hygienist that can do it. If you're going to be doing a bunch of, like the McCarthy, I'm going to drill $50,000. And if you've got a particular job, you're going to be doing a lot of it, let us know. We'll let the sub-community go. Did y'all do something like this? We need 4 hours of data at least. He goes, oh dude, I'll be doing it 8 hours a day for a while. Cool. We'll all contribute money. If his industrial hygienist is one that's not free, we'll all throw money at it because we don't want the data. Because once you've got the data, you're good. Some of your trade organizations, some of the unions have it, and they could be loose-knit groups. Again, it could be manufacturers' data, but you've got to have the objective data. And you need a written exposure plan. This is what I'm going to be looking for when my superintendents or foremen contact representatives from your firm 2 weeks before you come out. I'm going to be looking for this data. Show me this. Don't bother coming until you're able to get this stuff together, because we're going to need to see it. And you're a competent person. So the OSHA's definition of a competent person, let me ask you, you're a good guy, I'm going to tease you. Let me see if I can find somebody. No, I can't find anybody else. Okay, so I guess I'm going to have to tease you. Can an apprentice, remember how Will reacted a minute ago? You know what I get? Can an apprentice be a competent person? No, you're right. An apprentice can. As long as they can stop work. If they have the authority to stop work, if your company has a policy, hey, anybody see something that's wrong, they can stop it, boom. You got a competent person. Okay? So you may need to name the person, and you could name an apprentice that's on your job. And they have some additional duties. They got to regularly, frequently do it. Hey, would regularly be once a week? Would sound pretty regular to me. So if they did regular inspections, and then you know what, if you How many of your foremen or superintendents have a daily log? Show of hands. Man, we're not saying you need more data. We're not saying you need more paperwork. You're already doing it. Add that to your daily log, you're done. You've got the proof you need that you were inspecting your hazards. And if you say, hey, we shut this down for an hour because the filters were dirty. Done. We inspected it and today it looked good, just like yesterday it looked good. Cool. You just have to have that data. Medical surveillance, big stuff. We talked about that 30 or more times a year, whether it's for a minute, half a shift, whatever, it doesn't matter. It puts on his face, boom, that counts as one. And then after they do that, that medical eval, every 3 years. Do I have anybody here that is concerned, like, how about a guy I just hired at Hall? Or how about a guy I just hired? Damn it, I just hired this guy. I didn't put all that stuff in that guy's lung. He hadn't even started for me. Are you responsible for that? Nope. One of the ways to ensure that you're not responsible for it is, if your line of work knows you're going to be wearing a respirator more than 30 times a year, have the medical eval. Have the medical eval in the first couple of days. Let's say his wine bottle is half full because of who he worked for before. You're not responsible for that. You're only going to be responsible for the contamination after he's been working for you. Does that make sense? That comes out in apportionment when someone is so ill from this disease that they need to be financially compensated, and the workers' compensation carriers will work that out for you, and the apportionment will be, I worked for this guy for 30 years, I worked for this guy for a week, and I worked for this guy for four years. The relative ratio of that will be based on the amount of time you work for them doing that kind of work, so that no one company is unfairly punished. I think that's a pretty decent rule. Go ahead, Gus.
When does the year start? From the first time they wear the respirator, or calendar year?
Thank you, Gus. Calendar year. January to January. Any other comments or questions? Boy, this class is quiet today. I think it must be because I'm off. Normally I'm a bit more bubbly, but we had a fairly long shift yesterday. I started at 5 and left at 11 at night. And that was 5 a.m. All right, so we okay with this medical stuff? All right, HAZCOM, it's this class. You need HAZCOM, and then they need to be aware of whatever your procedures are. And your procedures can be whatever it says in Table 1. Here's what we do. The key thing to note in Table 1 is it needs to be just what it says in Table 1. It's not sorta, it's not close to, exactly what it says. So if it says it's an integral water supply, that means that dude's built in. It can be an aftermarket add-on that's bolted. That's not a dude standing there with a Hudson sprayer. That's not integral. But if you look at a jackhammer, it doesn't say integral. It says water applied, which is a guy standing there with a Hudson sprayer or garden hose or whatever, and that's cool because jackhammers don't have water attachments on them. Here's what my buddies at OSHA tell me. Even good companies doing it right, they can almost always write them a ticket. Always write them a ticket because of the record keeping. You simply don't have that data. Their mama's from Missouri. Prove it. Show me that you did all the things that the regulation says. This is where they get it, and I got to tell you, OSHA is preparing to go out and look for clouds of dust. If there's a cloud of dust on a job site, they're coming. They're going to see it, they're going to stop, and they're going to look for data. You could be drilling holes through jello, okay? And if that dude creates a cloud, they're coming, okay, to look at that because they believe there could be silica there. Again, here, high level, here's what your employers must do. You either follow Table 1 or you go get you some data. And then these are the things that you cannot sweep silica dust anymore. You need an exposure plan, medical surveillance, HAZCOM, training, and your records. That's the key. Here's what was in Table 1, and I think you should note this stuff. Over here it says, hey, if I'm outdoors and I'm doing it less than 4 hours, what do I need to protect myself? Nothing. If it's more than 4 hours, I need an APF 10. The APF stands for an assigned protection factor. What that means is you can be exposed to 10 times the PEL and be safe.
I got it.
If you're indoors doing exactly the same thing, indoors, you need the respirator, no matter how you're doing it for 5 minutes, you need a respirator. So the table shows you indoors and outdoors, okay? Task rotation, all of these items are defined in that. And if you're clever and you read through the tables, you'll see the worst possible exposure that OSHA believes you could have would be a 25. So the respirators that we're setting up for Anthony and everyone at Unger Construction, these PAPRs, APF 25s. If I've got my guys set up such that they're protected for the worst possible condition that they could ever see, now I don't need data. Because the data tells me what kind of respirator would I need. And what I'm saying is, I don't care what the data says, we're putting them in this respirator to make them safe, because this stuff is scary. Anthony.
You don't have to wear a hard hat.
Oh, go ahead, say that loud.
You don't have to wear a hard hat when you have it on.
Yeah, this respirator, you don't have to have a hard hat on. Okay, so this is a full face respirator, kind of looks like a Star Wars stormtrooper kind of guy. Okay, and they have a bump cap. The bump cap is a much lighter version than the one that's the hard hat. And so what you can do is you can control the hazards from falling objects by isolation or task rotation, and now you can wear the one that is lightweight and pretty comfortable to work with. And as Anthony said before, it's pretty darn decent. Okay, I also want you to be aware it's all dust. OSHA sees that. I tell you what, would you find this hard to believe that OSHA has a regulation? Well, I swear. There's a regulation for dust that is otherwise not regulated. What? Yeah. Okay. So if it's an inert material, it falls into this inert dust or nuisance dust, there's a regulation for it. And here's the exposure for total dust, 10,000 micrograms. That's way above our 25. But the respirable dust, anything that's tiny and small that you can breathe in, 5,000. It's a big deal. So the moral of the story is after June 3rd, I don't care what kind of dust you're generating, control that dude. Because you're going to have a lot more attention than you want. The enforcement officers, there's a lot of confusion about this regulation. People say, well, it's not going to start in June. It starts in September. I saw it. My insurance company gave me an email, or I saw it from my union, or no. Enforcement doesn't start until September. The regulation goes into place in June. That's like a city that's got a dangerous intersection. Everybody that drives around that area knows that intersection is dangerous. They put in a stop sign, four-way stop, and the city fathers tell the police department, but don't write any tickets until September. Because they believe people are going to stop. And it's new and different, and it may catch a person now and then that might be new to it. Okay? But they're expecting June 23rd, you're in compliance. Table 1. If you're not in that table, you better be below those limits, and you better be able to prove it. And remember, substantially similar data can be shared. Here's one of the things I know that anybody mix powdered goods? Bagged stuff?
Yeah,
never did. Okay. Not on table 1. Crap. You're gonna need data. So if you got a job where somebody's gonna be doing that stuff, and you know it's a common material that we all might use, split it with you. Let's find ways to get that stuff done. Okay, because you're gonna need that data. Okay, so if you got a firm that might be interested in sampling or splitting the data or coming together, contact us. We'll see if we can't put some informal group of people together to make it easy so that we can all have that. Again, here's what, if you're not on table 1, here's your, which is regulations are also, we gave you options. They're called alternatives. Just do the alternative thing. Okay? Here's what that lists. Looks a lot like table 1, but you got to go get the data. All right, so here's what Unger expects of you as a subcontractor. The things listed on this slide. As of June 23rd, you're going to be asking for these things. Okay? if you need help, your firm is like, oh my, we'll find a way to help you. But this is what we're going to be expecting. And we're done. Comments or questions? Bill?
So you say there's no sweeping of the silica, so I suppose a forced sweep would not be a way of containment?
Man, I'd like to try it. I'd love to get the data on it. I want to try it.
If you have these areas where the settles something where you have to sweep all day.
I understand. I'd like to get it, but I think what's probably going to happen, guys are going to be wearing, pushing vacuums, you know, with a squeegee type, you know, pushing vacuums through there, which is the big deal, right? And it's like, well, that's not my dust, he did it, okay? And then he, well, this is dust. You do it for an hour, and then he'll do it for an hour, and we'll have everybody, because we're all, who knows which dust fell which way, right? But you're not going to be able to, I would like to try floor sweep. Anybody else got a big job that they got a lot of sweeping and a lot of crap going on? Let's go get the data, because I think that's a pretty decent product. But I've read that regulation closely, and nowhere in that regulation says if Dave Simpson doesn't think you need it, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Maybe you go to,
cheers.
Maybe you go to floor sweep and say, hey, I'm going to cut out
Yep.
all of the product unless you.
There's got to be a way.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way. Okay, any other comments or questions? Anthony.
How about subcontractors that are already on the job who haven't been through this and don't know?
Well, I'm going to be coming out to all of our job sites, okay? And none of the stuff they're trying to do anything wrong. You know, they're not. But I'll bet you that the folks that live on Mahogany Row, like Jason and his partners in the ownership, I'll bet they were clever enough to write a contract that says, if you're a sub, you got to follow all the rules. If the rule changes, it doesn't say, and if the rule changes, you don't have to do it. The expectation is follow the rules. This is the law. The law is designed to protect the workers that are being killed by this stuff. It's the right thing to do. And if they can't get it done, they're going to stop work. We're not, you know, June 23rd is the law. Things change. Any other comments or questions?